Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the 9th part of the series of tutorial WordPress 101 for beginner developers. Welcome again. In this tutorial, in this lesson, we're gonna talk about the WP query, the query post. This argument is kind of complicated and probably is not really suitable for a beginner developer, but the query post is a core functionalities of WordPress. It's a really important function. And if you understand how it works, you will be able to create pretty much everything. You will be able to edit drastically your theme and create some amazing results. The WP query is the function that handles the generation of the core content of a WordPress installation. It's the function that calls the database, accesses the database and retrieves all the data of your page, of your posts, or custom post types, or whatever content you have saved in your CMS. The WP query is really important. So where do we have right now the WP query? We're already using it without knowing it. Basically, if we access the index.php, the page that handle our blog loop, the generation of our blog post, we see here we have our if statement and a while loop that loops through all the posts that we have. This have post is the subsequential function called after a query post. The query post is a function that WordPress calls by itself while generating the website. So we don't have to call that function, it's already built in. And that function comes with some variables inside. There are global variables. So WordPress, every time you access a page or you access a post, it will call that query post and it will retrieve for you all those dynamic information without you creating or writing again that query post. So why we want to edit? Because editing the query post gives us the ability to generate the content whenever and wherever we want. For example, if we go on our current website, right now we have all our blog posts in the blog page, but if I want, like for example 2 or 3 or just one recent, like the most recent, the last published blog post in my homepage, how can I do it? I have to edit the homepage. I have to create a specific section, specific PHP file to handle the homepage and generate a query post with a specific limit, saying that I want just one post and I want just the most recent post. So that's why the query post is really important. Also, sometimes you see that in those magazines or those like blogs, like tech blogs or whatever blog you see, you can see easily that sometimes they have specific section with specific blog posts that are separated based on the argument or based on the category or based on the tags or based on whatever option they selected in the CMS. Those different sections that print different blog posts are mostly managed through the query post. Before starting, again, a little heads up. If you access and you search in the codec of WordPress the reference of the query post, that is this URL right here, you will see nice warning at the beginning, a nice note at the beginning of the reference for the query post that says you don't have to use the query post. This is really confusing. Basically, the query post is the basic standard function of WordPress and you shouldn't touch it. You shouldn't edit that main loop functionality because the main loop is for WordPress and WordPress only. It's really complicated, convoluted, and sometimes it can cause problems for you. So if you have to edit the query post, don't use the query post function. I know it's still complicated and it's getting more and more complicated, but just so you know, if you decide to edit the query post using the query post function, you're gonna increase drastically the loading speed of your website. So how can we do it? So I just said that I want to show you how to handle the query post, but then I say don't use the query post. To do that, we have two methods that WordPress gives us to handle the query post without destroying the actual query post, the main loop. Those methods are the WP query and the get posts function. So let's take a look. First of all, let's access our CMS, our administration panel of WordPress. And just so you know, I created before three new blog posts just because I have a little bit of content to manage my new query and to print some specific information in specific pages. I also created 3 categories to organize my blog post: news, reviews, and tutorial. These categories are pretty much standard in every blog, like tech-based blog that we can see online. And then, as I said, I created these 3 new blog posts and associated each one of these blog posts to a specific category. So we have one tutorial, review, and news. If we access the blog page, you will see that I also created and uploaded a specific featured image, just so it's, what can I say, it's prettier than this one is pretty ugly. But anyway, I'm gonna upload this picture on GitHub, so if you want to use it and you want to upload it on your team, you can do it, totally do it. You can download it for free on GitHub, so no worries. Anyway, if you are at my same page, so you have these 3 new blog posts with some gibberish content inside associated to 3 different categories, we're ready to go. Let's get started. As I said, what I want to achieve in this tutorial is I want to print the most recent blog post in the home page, and then I want to print another row with just the news section, and then I want to print the 3rd row with just the review section. So to do that, I have to use the WP query post. Let's access our code, and to actually edit the home page, I have to create a specific page template for that page, so I can insert and input my specific PHP code. I could use another method because the home page is my front page, so I could use a code called here, for example, like if is front page. Inside here, I could write my custom queries, and then I could state an else, otherwise is not the front page. Let's print simply my query loop. I could use that, but in this way I will have all my code inside index.php, and I don't really like this method because it's really convoluted, and if I want to create a lots of exception or different query posts, this page is gonna look cluttered. It's gonna be hard to update and to maintain, so better keep it super simple. WordPress gives us the ability to split our code in different pages and different templates, so let's use that built-in functionalities. In a previous lesson, I talked about the page template, how to associate a specific PHP file to a specific page. So if you remember correctly, we can use or the ID or the slug or create a template name. In this case, I want to use the slug name of my page. My page is home, so I have to create a new file called page-home.php. Inside there, for now I just copy and paste the index.php file. So I'm gonna have the same exact content that I see right now in the home page. If I refresh the page, of course I'm gonna see the same content because the query post is not edited, so the query post accesses the post information of my page and print the content of that page. That is content without any type of post format. So I'm gonna see the title and all the post information. I have my sidebar, my footer, and whatever. But let's start to build some magic. So I want to create as the first row outside my left and right sidebar, I want to create here my last blog post. So outside here, I'm gonna use a simple markup from Bootstrap because I'm using that one called XS12. Close it, open here, create some space, and open the usual PHP code, and let's get started. Now we have to create, first we have to create a variable. So for variable's name, just for conveniency and just to help us to remember what that variable is for, we have to create, every time we create a variable should have a meaning to that specific section. So in this case, I want to create the last blog post, so I can call like the variable last blog. Oops. It's equal new WP query. Now in this variable, we just stored the class WPQuery. This class accesses the query post loop and gives us a new instance of the query post loop. So we are not gonna touch the actual built-in, the actual main loop of the query post, but we're gonna create a new empty query post from scratch that we can handle and manage however we want without destroying the main loop. So we save it and keep going. With this query post, now I have to specify some specific information inside here. The query post is really powerful because it gives us the ability to select whatever element, whatever content we want from our administration panel just by stating variables of the content that we want. And those variables can be written through just a single string inside the query post or with an array of variables. For now, I'm gonna use the string. In the next row, I'm gonna use the array of variables. So we're gonna see both examples. To write a string, of course, open the tags, the single quote to write a string, and let's say that I want to print just the post. Remember, the WP query can access posts, pages, custom post type, categories, tags, whatever element. We can access whatever element is inside our WordPress. So we have to specify which type of content we want. In my case, I want just the post type, if I'm able to write type properly. So now the query post is access our post. As I said, I want just one blog post. So I can specify another parameters using the character E, posts per page equal 1, and save it for now. So now we have our new query post stored inside this variable. Following the logic of WordPress, we should be able to reuse the query loop because we have to always use a query loop to call the specific content that we want. But if we save this and we access our homepage and we check what's going on, we're gonna see that we have a duplicate of our actual content. So we have the exact same content. Basically, this loop is repeating exactly the same of this loop. So this variable that creates a new query post is not affecting this. How we can say that, how we can communicate to WordPress, I want this loop to use this new parameter. So I want to just the post and I want to just one post, the latest one. I don't want the page information. Simply, we have to inject our WP query in these functions. And it's super simple. Just copy the variable that has inside the WP query class, paste it here, and let's write a little arrow. This is a standard PHP function. Basically is a class that calls a function and inject a specific information of that class, the new class instance that we created inside this function. And we have to repeat exactly the same for HuffPost and dpost. And that's it. We don't have to repeat the same for the post format because if we edit the post functions, everything inside the loop is gonna refer to the post function. So if we want the time, the category, the title, or whatever information inside the post that we used to call simply inside our loop, we can do it after manipulating the query post without repeating the same thing, because after we manipulate the post with our new query post, all the information is going to be referred to this new one and not the actual old one. So let's go check the homepage, refresh, and as I wanted, I have, if I access the markup, inside here, I have my first row that contains my content of my latest blog post published without touching the actual query post. If we were using the query post, actual built-in query post, we will have to secure this other one by resetting the standard query post. In this case, we created a new instance that is not affecting the usual query post. So all the other content of our page are still there and are not affected by our query post. So let's keep going. Now, after the information of the home page, I want to print here underneath other 2 blog posts from my list of 3, but I want to skip the last one because I don't want to repeat it. So let's go back in our code, and before proceeding, always remember, every time you edit a query post with a new instance, at the end of the loop, always use the function to reset the post data. This function is a safeguard, is a life-saving function that reset all the previous editing of post data that are before this function. This is a really safe functions that we should use every time we edit our query post, so we prevent our new query post, our edit arguments for our query post to affect other query posts if we use the same variables, if we want to use the same variable. This is really safe. Every time you create and generate a new query post, please use this one to clean the query post and reset it to 0 or reset it to empty or reset it to whatever it was before, so you don't affect future query posts. So let's keep going. Now, as I said, here we have our first row with just 1 post. Now we have here the content of our page with our standard query post that called the content of the page. Underneath here, I want to print, and I'm going to use a comment like print other 2 posts, not the first one. So, as I did before, I can copy the code, copy, paste, and at this point though, because I don't want, if I do that, I want just 2 posts to see in this section. But at this point, if I call 2 posts and I save it and I go in my front end and refresh it, I'm gonna see that yes, I have the 2 posts because I set the limit to 2, but I still have the repetition of the latest blog post, the last one published. I don't want that. How can I do it? I can use another variable that is called the offset. So offset 1. The offset variable is really nice because it's basically we are saying to WordPress, okay, loop with this new query post inside the post and post per page just 2, but skip the first one. I don't want to see the first one. I want to see just the second and the third one. And WordPress is gonna answer properly and it's gonna print our umbrella post and our rocket post. So we have the same exact list that it's from our posts page in our CMS, in our administration panel, that is Lightbulb post is the last one, is on top. We have our homepage content and we have our umbrella post and rocket post. And that's so nice. Now, what I want to do, I have these other blog posts that are inside the tutorials section. So at the end here, I want to create another row to print just the posts that are insert in that specific category, the tutorial category. So what can we do? As usual, we can use our custom query post. Before, just to have a visual separation, we can insert an HR tag that is going to insert a breaking line. Let's copy the code, open the PHP tag, print it down, and of course change the comment and say print only tutorials, if I'm able to write tutorials. So now I don't want any limit, so I want this section to print all the tutorials that I have. To avoid to use a limit, if I don't specify, always remember, if I don't specify anything, the default value that is going to use WordPress to print the number of posts in a single page is based on our reading options in the settings menu, and its blog pages show at most. So I'm saying to WordPress with this option that I want 10 posts per page. And if I don't specify anything in a new query post, that query post is going to use that variable inside our settings page. So always remember, specify something if you want something different, of course. In my case, I don't want any limit to the tutorials, so the value that I'm going to put inside is -1. With -1, I'm saying to WordPress that post per page has to be infinite. I don't want any limit of this. I want to remove the offset. And as I said, I want to print just the tutorials. To call a specific post in a specific category, I just have to insert the category ID or the category name. To insert the ID, I can just specify cat, like a cat, equal, and insert the ID of that category. To check the ID of a category, you can just go simply inside the post page, access the category, click on the tutorial, and check the URI. The URI where there's variable that says tag_ID number 8. Let's go back in our code and say cat equal 8. Save it. Let's go back in our front end, refresh. And we have our separation, and we have just our tutorials post. So the Lightbulb post, that is a tutorial, Pancake, and the Lorem Ipsum post, that is still a tutorial. So we just have the 3 tutorials. But what if instead of the ID, we want to use the category name? If we are super sure that the category name is never going to change, we can call a specific category name, a specific post inside a specific category name. To do that, we have to just simply change this variable. Instead of cat, we have to use category, category_name equal, and we have to use the actual slug of the category. The slug is all lowercase, so tutorials. Save it, refresh the page, and nothing's gonna change. Just to show you that it's working, if I change news, that is the other categories, and refresh, we're gonna see just the news section. So the news posts, the rocket post, the 7 Ages of Men, and that's it, because only these 2 posts are inside the news category. Let's roll back on the second section where we're printing just 2 blog posts and we are offsetting 1. If I want to change this variable, if I want to use another method instead of a single string and I want to use an array of inputs, we can simply change our structure of how we call our specific variables for the new WP query. In this case, we're gonna use another variable called usually args. Args is the short name for arguments. Inside of WP query, all these variables, all these single values are arguments. So you have an argument of type, you have an argument of post per page, and you have an argument of offset. in this case, we're going to use a variable called args, and inside we're going to create an array of arguments that are going to be printed inside the WP query. The array of arguments can be ordered in a really nice looking way because, for example, this is really simple. We have just 3 elements and it's easy to read because it's super short. But sometimes it could happen that we have a WP query, a WP query that is really long, is really complicated. Even if I just, to show you something, if I duplicate this, sometimes can happen that you have all these options and all these exceptions, and reading through these single variables, the single string of attributes is really complicated and it's really confusing. It's really easy to make a typo and not recognize the typo and not understanding what's wrong, what did I do wrong. So if we have a really long string with a lot of options, always use an array. It's easier to understand, it's easier to handle, and it's easier to expand also. Save it. And the array, we have to use the standard structure of a PHP array. So we want just the type posts per page. And in this case, because I'm in an array, I'm not in a string, I can insert, and I have to insert the numeric variable as an integer and not as a string. So in this case, I'm gonna type 2 as an actual number and not 2 as a string. Comma, and the last parameter is offset 1. Now, I just have to insert the arguments variable inside the WP query and replace it our string. Let's go back. Let's go in our second row, refresh, and we have exactly the same. We have the umbrella pose and the rocket pose. There are the 2 arguments and nothing's changed because we recreated the same string here with an array of values. And as you can see, the array of values is really more readable and it's really easy to understand. It's less complicated than a single long, really cluttered string. So if you can choose and you have an option, always go for the easiest one to manage and to handle. And also for today's lesson, it's pretty much everything. I'm gonna keep going with the WP query, with the query post arguments in the next lesson, because I tackled just the surface. We just scratched the 0.001% of all the options that come with the WP query function. So for now, I don't want to put too many things on the table. These are the basics of the WP query. Please give it a try. Try to create some example. Try to experiment with this query post and see when it's working, when it's not, what's wrong, what if you create some issue, if you create some problem, or if you succeed to achieve a specific goal that you had in mind since the beginning of time. But anyway, in the next lesson, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna dig more in depth of the query post, and we're gonna do some really cool stuff with this query post, and we're gonna see how really powerful it is and how we can create some really good looking option for our custom theme. So as usual, thank you for checking this video again, and if you like, give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel or share this video. I really love how people share this video. And of course, if you have doubts or something's not working or if something's not clear, just leave it a comment. As you can see, I try to answer to everyone. If I don't answer to you, I think 100% of the time is because your privacy settings are way too high and I cannot reply to you. It happens a couple of times with a couple of users, and I ended up adding those users on Google Plus and sending a private message to those users to answer those comments. So check your privacy settings. If you leave a comment and you leave questions and you want an answer, please remove your privacy settings so I can reply to you, and it's gonna be way easier for me. So anyway, thank you again for checking this video, and hope to see you next time.